and this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Please consult with a qualified financial professional for advice specific to your situation. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast producers or sponsors. We make no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy or completeness of the content. Today, we are learning from Brooklyn Holton, who is a retired professional athlete and three-time Olympic medalist. Now she has her own business helping entrepreneurs. So, Brooklyn, I think it's always helpful for people to just describe their journey and telling us how you got to where you are. So, would you mind just starting there?
Yeah, I'd love to. I definitely was influenced by my family. I kind of grew up in a world of athletics and entrepreneurship. I did sports starting from 3 or 4 years old. I went into club soccer, and that kind of began a whole athletic journey. And then also saw my parents opening their own businesses, from a restaurant to hydro seeding company, and that kind of showed the start of what I guess my life was going to be. It influenced me a lot, getting to be involved with both my mom and my dad in different areas of work, and also different areas of my own enjoyment of like soccer or track, volleyball, things like that. I decided to go into college based on a track scholarship. I wasn't really sure exactly what direction I wanted to go in, because watching my family own businesses, that really interested me. I had also aunts and uncles that did that. And so I was like, well, there's not a college that I go to that I then own a business. So what does this process look like? And my head track coach in high school helped me kind of be guided into college through that. And so I went through that normal kind of college route. I did track there, and then decided to double major, thinking I was going to open a functional training facility. I was going to combine my entrepreneurship love and my athletics. And during that time, actually began a position with local government while I was finishing college, and realized that I might be able to influence or affect communities and places around me within local government. And so I actually worked there for about 12 years, working for local jurisdictions in Washington state, and then decided, okay, I'm ready. This is exciting, but I'm limited. There's a lot of red tape in local government, even more than you would think in government in general, because we're kind of the bottom of the funding line. And so went off on my own and went fully into my own entrepreneurship. And so that's kind of the history of, I guess, where I'm at with my company, which is Firm Foundations Community Consulting.
And so when you initially got the government job to begin with, how did that come about?
I was going to school and needed a position that was pretty flexible, wasn't full time, and let me sort of I wanted to get away from the college environment. I was probably not a typical student in that I enjoyed the work side of life more so than the college scene, I guess. And so I kind of just made a decision. I want to pursue a job or work that brought me away from that and kind of helped me. I was ready to transition out of college, and I wanted something that helped me do that. And so I found it online and applied, and it gave me a really good balance. It was about an hour and a half away from my school, but it was where I lived was in between both college and that job. And so it let me kind of have space. I got to, have a lot of thought and thinking time while I was driving every day. And so I kind of pursued it for that, but also was just interested in the community aspect. So it was in a neighborhoods department within a large city. And so I got to work with the entire community, working on grants and projects, everything from ice cream socials to community planning and large grants. So I was excited about the kind of business side of it, but also the community and people side, and it helping me transition out of college. So.
Yeah, ice cream social. I'm there. Say no more.
Yep, they're always the best. There's something about it. It's always so
Yeah.
good.
So when you made this transition from athlete to entrepreneurship, was that a hard transition?
I would say it is still a hard transition, not just because it's going from one world to another, but I had to stop being an athlete due to pretty much career ending injury. So I was actually doing both bobsled with Team USA and women's professional football. So it's the outdoor full 11-11 tackle. And they complemented each other because they were in different seasons of the year. So bobsled
Mm.
season was football's off season and vice versa. And I actually ended up having an injury in football that ended all of all of my athletics. So whether it was bobsled or anything else, and so that kind of forced me to be in a place where my job became the majority of what I was doing, which from the time I was 4 has never been my lifestyle. My lifestyle has always been everything works around my training schedule.
Right.
Even when I had a full time job, once I graduated college, I went full time with local government. So even in that full time, I would wake up before work. I'd go get a full gym workout in. I'd go to work, and then I'd leave work with my bag and I'd go to practice. And so everything was timed around that training schedule that I had. And so all of a sudden that was gone. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, my identity is wrapped up in this. Not in a bad way, but just in terms of that's what I've known for decades. And so with that extra time, it kind of allowed that entrepreneurship to sort of resurface. And so it wasn't necessarily an enjoyable one for one change, but it definitely gave me space to realize, okay, what can I do? Who can I be beyond an athlete? And that kind of brought me back into that entrepreneurship and realization that that's really where I can flourish, and soon to realize that's really where I can support other people in their own kind of thriving place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of athletes, you hear that story all the time, right? You've been told what to do practically your whole life.
Yes.
You even have someone who probably introduced you to sport at a very young age. So
Yep.
when you were thinking about these next steps, I'm sure you had important players on your team. So who helped you along the way? And what other intangibles do you look for beyond that helped you?
Yeah, so kind of what you just said in terms of I was sort of told what to do. Part of that also is I didn't really have much of a choice of who to hang out with either. So
Right.
obviously I had a great relationship with my teammates, but even if I didn't, I wouldn't get to decide who was surrounding me or not if I wanted to stay committed to that sport and that team. And so even though I definitely had people in my life, my mom, my dad, my aunt and uncle, um, that have shown me entrepreneurship and also were the ones that encouraged me throughout my entire athletic career. I could always count on my parents and grandparents and people being at my sports. And so for them to influence both of those areas of my life, I think that was really valuable for me because I wasn't switching from, okay, well, my mom and dad love me in sports and they're super supportive, but I want to go do this thing. And they just don't really know how to connect with me around that. I didn't have to figure that part out because
Mm.
they did support both things. I was able to bring them both into those opportunities. With the losing of the teammates, I realized that I was going to have to do a lot more work around the specific community that I had around me. Prior to leaving athletics, I had my team, I had my coaches. I could connect with other professional athletes. I could connect with, retired coaches of Olympic athletes. There were so many people around me that could mentor me specifically in athletics. But when I was ready to go into entrepreneurship, they didn't have that same connection with me.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I have my parents, I have people I can look at, but I just started reading books, listening to podcasts, joining LinkedIn, saying yes to anybody that wanted to be my
Yeah.
friend on LinkedIn or my professional contact, and really actually had to dive in a lot to figure out what kind of mentorship do I want to have in my world of business, and whether that's looking at entrepreneurship for myself, wealth management, investment in other companies, working with other businesses or clients. my whole world, I knew how to be an athlete. I knew how to go with coaches and try out and all of that. And I didn't have mentorship really inside the entrepreneurship side. So outside of who was able to kind of cross over between athletics and entrepreneurship, I really had to do actually a lot of digging on my own. And so that's partially why I'm excited to be on this podcast with you, because the podcast has been such a valuable thing for me to kind of help me find resources, find people to follow or learn from, conferences to go to. So I definitely think that from a mentorship standpoint, I'm almost still looking for that. I have some niche people. Real estate tax attorney is one individual who's very, this isn't right, this is right, did you think about this? He's a very strong-headed support for me, but also it's more around how can I learn from a variety of people, I think, than one mentor, at least at this point that I'm at.
Yeah, well, maybe someone listening here knows someone to connect you with and get that final mentor that you're looking for. But
Oh,
no,
reach
I
out.
think, yeah, I think what you just said will resonate with so many different people. You have coaches and teammates and you've formed great bonds with them, but you don't necessarily know how to translate that to quote unquote real world.
Yeah.
And so that can be super intimidating, but I like what you said. It was just like, you have to just take the first step and listen to a podcast. It's probably going to be confusing at first, but if you just keep taking those little actions, eventually it'll compound on itself over time. And you can look back and be like, oh, wow, look where I was even 2 months ago versus where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
But keeping on that topic, it sounds like since your family was into entrepreneurship, you might have learned about money growing up with them, right?
No.
Oh.
Actually, my sister and I had a conversation probably within the last maybe year or two, just around how much we realized we didn't know as we started wanting to
Mm,
grow our own wealth. Uh, I definitely had little snippets of that in my life. I know my grandparents would talk about their stocks, they would talk about investment, they'd say, oh yeah, we could do this loan, or we can, and here's an interest rate. I would hear these terms and information, but I saw entrepreneurship, the lessons or the kind of technical pieces of that process weren't actually ever communicated. It is very much an
yeah.
experiential aspect of entrepreneurship with my family, but not so much educational. So in that conversation with my sister, part of why we were having it was because her and her, she is, my niece and nephew with her are, they're, one of them's graduating this year, one of them graduated a few years ago, and so she's, she's becoming an empty nester, and she's like, what do I do with my time, and I won't have to
Yeah.
do all of this with my kids. And so we just started talking about what it looks like to essentially be an adult, and what do adults do with their money, what do adults do with their time, right? And so how do we be responsible also for the future of her kids? And I personally don't have kids, but I think about my nieces and nephews, or just people in my family. And so the conversation about wealth management and wealth creation and generation, and it's like, okay, what does that look like for us? Because we don't plan to inherit any insane amount of money that's going to transfer our lives.
Totally.
I personally don't know anyone that could identify as a trust fund child. So there's this world of financial opportunity that both I think wasn't instilled in me or wasn't shown to me, but also I know exists. And so with that, I've part of all those podcasts and books and things that I've read has been a lot of the financial literacy. And what does it look like to not just have my retirement, right? I started a retirement account when I was 22, when I started working at the city. And so I have that, but it's like, okay, well, what do I do with that? Should I leave it there
Right.
forever, right? I left the city. What do I do with that transition now? And so even just getting a wealth manager and talking about that and saying, I want to grow this. I want to invest. I want to see the clients that I have in my business, and how do I have an opportunity for myself while also supporting them and growing what they're doing, and what I believe in that way. And so it's kind of honestly been a big process of self-learning and sharing learning with people that I've connected with, or friends or family that I know that are also interested in learning about
Yeah.
that. So it
I
is not
love that.
super easy for me to understand, but it's something I really enjoy learning about. So.
Yeah, I think that's so relatable because people are in the same boat, and it's also hard to talk about finances. It's always been like a touchy subject. And I know for me, I resonate a lot with what you're saying and why I set out to start this platform because I was like, okay, I even grew up in a family where alternative investing was brought to me at a very early age, whereas I know other people are kind of just like stock and bond. And I personally don't believe that that's the way that you should go. But all that to say, even though I was exposed to that at an early age, I still was kind of like, what do I do with my money though? And so that's kind of why I went on this journey too. And I was like, I feel like other people have to be thinking these same questions, right? So you mentioned that you've kind of started with the podcasts and other things like that. Is there one in particular that you would recommend for folks to just getting started to get financially literate?
Yeah, I'm all about strategy. So one of them actually that I really like, and it's not necessarily finance specific, but they cover everything from like it's a group of attorneys actually out of the Washington State, North Central Washington area, so east side of the Cascade Mountains. And they cover a lot of things, and they might one day they might be talking. Their most recent one was around workplace harassment. What does that include for the employee and the employer? But then they'll also talk about estate taxes and real estate planning and estate planning and things like that from an attorney's point of view. And so it's actually I don't know if I show it, if you can see it, but JDSA's Law Talk, and that might be really boring for some people. But they do a really, really good job of communicating what can be very legalese language into super understandable, digestible, and in ways for the user to understand that. And then I also am probably similar to a lot of people where even just from Instagram or from Instagram, finding a YouTube channel from like tax strategist. So I think I was, I have two that I was following before, and I've just kind of, I think I've run out with them. I guess I'm not really sure how to say it, but they aren't ones I'm going to recommend, but I would just say if you have somebody who is a tax strategist who has experience either as like a tax attorney, like a real estate tax attorney, or a prior staff person within the IRS, or somebody who is, has at least some experience around. I'm drawing a blank on the name. They're a CPA. It's the highest level. They know do you know,
Okay.
they know like their tax information, like they know the tax law.
Okay.
It's an endorsement. I will maybe think of it through the end of this call. I think of because I should know it. But I think I would just recommend tax strategist. I think they can range
Yeah.
everywhere from what do you do when you're wanting to pass your home down to your kids to how do you run a business in a way that doesn't have you end up paying ridiculous amount of taxes at the end of the year, and what does that
Right.
reinvestment look like? What is the structure from an LLC to a corp to operating as an S corp, and what are implications with that? Because I think a lot of people don't realize how much investment and financial planning is tied to what the
Right.
tax structure specifically is.
Right.
And the government's going to structure their tax code based on where they want to see investment. And so knowing that and being up to date, having somebody that can share with you, oh, here's how your tax structure is different this year versus last year. Here's what you can write off as a percentage this year versus last year, and how it's going to sunset or not. There's so much information that you can understand on how to invest based on what the current tax code tells you can write off or get credits for. So that's probably what I would most recommend is, and why I listen to mainly the law and attorney ones, is because they are the ones reading. They are
Yes.
the ones, knowing and staying up to date with the tax code. And so I think their information is absolutely invaluable and usually current and up to date if laws haven't recently changed. So.
No, I think taxes are something that's probably often overlooked. But if you look at what the wealthiest focus on, they focus on taxes because the more money you can keep in your pocket, the better. And
Yes.
unless it's legally blonde, law is just so dry and boring for most people. So it's nice to have a resource that hopefully tries to make it more approachable by the people that aren't in it every day.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think a lot of the clients that I have are small businesses, specifically around micro enterprises. So owner occupied businesses that are, or owner operated businesses that are with 5 or fewer employees. So those are pretty small. They can be small that way, but then they might be operating, in a small rural area. One might only have $100,000 of income or revenue that year, whereas another one might have 10 million, but still have a really
Mm,
small staff. Those have completely different implications about what that business should do to grow or invest, or what they should do or know around their tax strategy and implications. And so it's really, in my opinion, fun. I call it a therapy session. Typically, the business owner that I sit down with or we walk through, they they share about their business, but really they share about their life, because most people don't start their business because they're excited about filing taxes or building financial reports, or having to meet with their CPA or keep receipts in a box, right? They do it because they love jewelry or they want to start a clean skincare line, or things like that. And so working with them through the technical side, and then also throwing in a few things of, yeah, if you understand how your taxes are going to work through the year and at the end of the year, you can plan more with your funding,
right.
at the beginning of the year, even before that next year comes. So as boring as it probably is for a lot of people, or maybe even just overwhelming, I think a lot
Yeah,
of people more so get overwhelmed by it. I really
absolutely.
enjoy being able to share and kind of support them through the process of being like, okay, this isn't so scary. This can be simplified to a degree. And so I'm excited about podcasts and books, and excited about what you're doing here. So I'll probably use you as a reference
Please
here
do.
soon.
No, I'm happy to help. And so now that you have this knowledge, how are you thinking about your or your future differently? What do you wish you would have known while on the path, and what has maybe changed?
Yeah. One thing, the top thing that I wish I would have known is that I could have started investing, and they're structured to invest at any point in my life. So I started working in middle school. My mom was the GM for a few gyms in our area. And I was like, oh, I'll clean. I love cleaning. I don't know why, it's
Oh,
therapeutic.
wow.
I was like, I'll clean, I'll mop the floor. The floor had those like 12 by 12-inch square tiles. And I was like, this is so fun to mop. So I'll do this line and this line. So I was
Oh
like,
my
I'll clean the
gosh.
gym, mom. And so I started working at a younger age, doing that or making smoothies for people. And my money just kind of sat in my account. I didn't do
Mm,
a lot with it. I probably, if you look at my finances, spend money on travel and food, and that will probably never change. And
same.
but that kind of started when I was in middle school. And when I got my license, the first thing I did was I drove 3 hours to this little small town so I could like just experience the mountains and the space. And like I was ready to eat food and travel from like right when I was able to. So I wish somebody had said, hey, you're obviously going to spend your money on that. Let's figure out how to either make it a write-off. Let's figure out a business
Mm,
if you have an idea. You're obviously into entrepreneurship. I wish somebody had walked up to me or taken me under their wing and said, there are ways for you to enjoy your life that don't add financial consequences to your future. And
yep.
so that fact in and of itself, is probably what I wish I would have known, that there are ways to enjoy everything that you love, without having it just be frivolous spending, right? You can, so
Yeah.
now, like if I want to travel somewhere, I try and find a conference or something where, like, while I'm there, I'm learning and I'm experiencing, and I'm probably going to eat some good food and meet some amazing people and learn something,
Yes.
right? So there's ways that we can live simply, but also with a lot of benefit, right? So we can do things that don't have to just be a one for one. I gave you $1, I get an ice cream cone, right? We can be like, I gave you $1, I got an ice cream cone. I learned how to turn this dollar into $2 next time. Like I'm
Yeah.
getting to see this beautiful place, and I'm sitting with one of my best friends, right? Like we can use that $1 to turn it into so many things, not just financially, but also just in terms of life and experiences. And so I think that has been one of the most substantial benefits for me of learning about investment and financial
Yeah.
management and tax strategy, right? The write off
Right.
aspect, tax strategy, and how do you tie that to what you're doing in your work or in your life? And so I'd probably say that. I wish I knew more.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up because there's so many tips and tricks that you can use, but a lot of us don't know half of them or even some of them. And so, kind of like what you said, just encouraging people to be curious and say, okay, this is what I like to do. How can I actually make money off of this in a way? So, I even came across a conversation recently where a husband and wife were talking, and he was talking about how he wanted a sports car. And the wife was like, okay, but you need an asset to cover the cost of that car. She's like, okay, yeah. And I like that line of thinking as well. Like, let's buy I don't know, an apartment building, and the rent that we get from that can then pay for the sports car, and you still have your other income to kind of
Yep.
supplement your
Yeah.
regular lifestyle.
Yeah, I think balancing that thought around um, I when I'm in conversation with people, it's an easy way I think for them to kind of understand what I'm talking about. But I think there's asset-based debt and liability-based debt. And when you
Right.
think about the liability-based debt, that's just like living off your credit card or like saying, well, I'm probably gonna have this money eventually, so I'm just gonna spend it and it's just a pair of shoes, something like that. Which more power to you. If you can do all of that and you want to get your shoes and that's like your world, like do it, right? That's probably
Yeah.
my version of food and travel.
Right.
But the part of the asset based debt is like real estate, right? Like you're obviously if you get a loan for something, it's going to be identified as debt, but it's producing, it becomes an asset. It doesn't become something that later on down the line you're going to be paying for, or that it doesn't bring you back a return on what you just invested, right? So unless your
Right.
pair of shoes is something that you are investing in and it will eventually sell for more money, like that would be considered, more of a liability. And so looking at it that way as well, and it's balancing those things, right? It's not only not only having asset based debt, but it's understanding that your assets need to be more than the debt of which you have a liability for. So I like the real estate sports car example for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, exactly. And my mom is a sucker for doing that. She's all about her designer purses and is like, well, one day they will be worth more. And that's how she justifies the investment.
Yep.
But so you already kind of alluded to your business and talking about how you help your entrepreneurs. But entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and it is an investment. So, how do most entrepreneurs know this is for them? And what is the motivating force behind a lot of the entrepreneurs that you work with?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple kind of pieces to this answer. One of the things I do first and foremost with them is have a conversation about the difference between self employment and entrepreneurship. Because self employment is let's say you open a store that you own and you go there every day and you work in it. And that's just kind of going to be your retirement. That's going to be what you do for your life. That is self employment. You're not looking to grow and expand. You don't want to scale up. You don't want to become a franchise. You're just excited about giving back to maybe the local community that you live in a way that you enjoy, right? Maybe that's a bakery, maybe that's a grocery store or a jewelry store, or maybe you're an esthetician and you want to have a little spa. That is self-employment, right? And so really understanding, are you an entrepreneur at heart? And if so, the way that you approach your business, it's a different model. You're approaching it from a place of scalability. And so the part where you kind of choose what your structure is has to look at, am I going to need to scale? Do I want to scale? Is my goal, to end up selling this company one day? Or
Right.
am I comfortable and really happy with being self-employed? There is nothing wrong with either one of them, but knowing that difference is super, super important. Because I think some people just assume that, well, I started my own business, I'm an entrepreneur. And yes, I mean you did, right? You started your own business, you launched it, you did everything you needed to do to open that business. Yet if your heart is in the work of the business itself and you want to kind of stay in that space, to think of yourself more as I want to be self-employed and I want to be tied to the things that self-employment allows. I get to bring my kids into work. I get to have some
Mm-hmm.
freedom in terms of, I'm just not going to open shop today, or I'm going to choose my schedule and my hours, and I'm going to decide, what nonprofit within my community I invest in. And that world is self-employment. And then entrepreneurship. And so we kind of go through that conversation about what implications of your business, why did you start, where do you see yourself going in 5, 10 years, what does retirement look for like for you? And their answers based on that allow me to know what direction, right? Am I just going to give them support to be stable so that their business is kind of one that they can just rely on, and the structure we put in place is just, it's almost autonomous in the sense that it will just be ongoing? Or is it going to have to be one that we scale and needs to be sustainable at phase 1, sustainable at phase 2, sustainable at phase 3, and through that? And that's a completely different conversation. That conversation, we go into a lot more of the tax strategy and then who they should be incorporating into their work, what kind of conversations about expansion. Who do you want your clientele to be? Who do you want your or customers? Who do you want your employers? What kind of employer do you want to be? Right? Because entrepreneurship oftentimes comes with not every business is going to sell, right? You want to have an exit strategy, but your exit strategy might be like you still own it, but you're hands off, and you've got an incredible CEO or GM that you bring in, and that's a whole other world than just growing a company and being able to sell it. That's most
Yeah.
people that want to sell their company should understand that that's similar to like going professional in sports. Like the ability for you to do that is it's not a normal typical thing for companies to really to be able to reach that. So um, that I think is a big part of understanding what motivates them and how to help them stay motivated. A lot of the businesses that I end up working with, I actually will get a contract with the state of Washington. State of Washington will pay me, and I will go and provide free technical assistance and support to small businesses. And so most of them can't afford to have that level of strategic support come in. And so the state has a micro enterprise association that supports that. And that's huge. And in that process, I realized they are so overwhelmed with the financial side or the marketing side or just the technical pieces of running a business that they are no longer motivated. And so if they aren't motivated, I really focus on that self-employment conversation. If they are motivated, it's like, okay, how do we build a structure? How do we make sure that your business is done in such a way that your motivation just grows, that you just get more excited, right? And if your goal is to one day sell your company, developing a franchise structure or things like that are going to keep you on fire for your company.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to, and I talk about franchises, we're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that I find that motivates individuals specifically around entrepreneurship is freedom of time. I think that in our world, a lot of what we think entrepreneurs are is around like their financial independence and financial, what it looks like for them to have that super nice sports car or the yacht or be able to go in private jet or even just go first class. I think those things are often tied when really, if you have a conversation with someone that is entrepreneurship minded, they're talking about freedom of time and being able to to have everything in place, whether it's a passive income or whether they are actively involved with one or more businesses. They want to have their time. Their time is sacred, and I think getting to that point in what kind of freedom in your time do you want to have is super important in understanding what kind of or what level of entrepreneur they have. But there's very few things outside of time specifically or like disposable time, right? And that's the time that you can do anything you want without having it tied to a commitment. Uh, there's very few things that I find that will overcome, that will be bigger than that, or at least mentioned above that at any point in time when I'm talking to them about motivation. So
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And there's this whole concept of trying to get to time freedom. So everyone's path is a little bit different, and entrepreneurship is just one of those. So
yes.
when you're getting investment for these entrepreneurs, what do investors like to see?
As unpopular as an answer as this might be, is a structured business plan, in my opinion, is one of the most valuable things a small business can have, because even if the investor is okay not seeing one, their questions are going to focus around answers that could be found in that plan. And so while they might not say, hey, I need you to have a business plan, they will need to know that, or they will be asking questions that you will only know by thinking through the things that you would do in a business plan, through that strategy. What do my financials look like over the next 3, 5, 10 years? What's my growth rate? What is my market analysis telling me? And so you have to understand all of those things if you intend to identify that investment. And how do I, what does your ROI look like, and how do I show that ROI is a reliable number? Like, what is my information telling me about that? And especially if you're looking through either like a service-based business or product-based, and product-wise could be something that's like kind of food and beverage, or you're looking at an innovation, right? And so if you even need seed funding because your idea, right, like a lot of things you see on like Shark Tank or things like that, there's these new innovative products. All of the questions are going to still be tied to those same things. What does that financial look like? What's that market analysis? How do you see your demand? What does your supply chain look like, especially if you're in manufacturing, right? So like being able to, as a business, have everything that exists up here on paper so that you can articulate it and you can show it. And you can actually not hand over your business, but hand over the structure and the confidence of your business beyond just your own self, because personality is a huge part of it, right? Like being able to connect with somebody, being able to have them believe in what you're doing and who you are, and so they see successful business in the fact that they think you are a successful person. There's also the side that the numbers really have to speak for themselves. And so even if the investor isn't saying, hey, I need a business plan, from a small business standpoint that's ready to grow, having that plan is going to be completely invaluable to the conversations around ROI and the things that tie to that for those investors.
Absolutely. And it probably helps kind of check in with yourself and be like, okay, am I really wanting to get into this? Like, this is a lot of work.
Oh yeah. It's like a capacity check, right? Like, oh
Yes.
my gosh, I didn't realize that I wasn't doing everything I need to do already. I'm going to have to add X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to have to figure out how to do this with employment, and I'm going to have to grow out of state. How do I even get like a foreign business license to do things outside of state? And like, what are those states' regulations, right? There's so much in terms of growth that if you come to somebody who has the ability to invest and you can't answer their questions, your capacity for growth, right? Your capacity to grow your business, the belief that you have is done an injustice, because you don't have the technical piece to back it up. Even if like even if in your gut and your heart, and you're like, even if you had this like incredible prophetic word one day and you're like, I got it, it's going to happen, right? Like the ability to transfer what you believe and know into the confidence of somebody else is often done through technical information.
And you know that problems are going to be inevitable. They're going to pop up. What are some common ones that you've seen?
I would say not understanding how your current finances can or would grow based on maybe the last year or the current year's information. I think finances are a really big struggle for businesses, small or medium or large. And obviously that's why in those other companies, in like corporation stuff, you're seeing these CFOs and all of these departments, because the finances are such a critical part to growth, right? Like there's actually a few companies that they believed in their product so much, but their financial structure didn't incorporate their warranty promise into its ability to grow. And so their profit margins were incorrect because the warranty cost actually wasn't calculated into that. And so they're like, hey, we have these like crazy, amazing profit margins, and we can show this growth. But then you take 2 years down the line, or 3 years down the line at the end of a warranty, especially in that maybe initial push, and you're seeing all of these costs that you're incurring based on either replacement of product, repair, or just returns, and you don't have that built in, right? And so, like, really understanding the financial landscape of it, I think, has probably been the biggest issue. Another thing, even whether it's product based business or not, if you are offering workshops or classes or willing to do speaking engagements, things like that, the cost tied to those should be incorporated into your financials. I see a lot of times with individuals who are doing like a workshop, whether it's online, if there's product tied to that workshop and their time tied to that workshop, they often don't account for the majority of the costs. And so the things that they're doing with that workshop, they're almost paying people at the end of it to show up and learn from them. And if you're not looking at it, if that's not your strategy, if you're not like, I might lose money on this, but the marketing return, right? Like my marketing funnel is going to benefit because I'm getting emails or follows, or, like if your marketing funnel isn't following this financial investment, it's just purely a loss. And from a non-monetarily, not like a qualitative more so aspect of it, you also are losing compound opportunity because you didn't capture in a potential client, you didn't bring in that email chain, right? And so you're offering something, and that can be something where you're looking at even like a sponsorship, and you're like, hey, we're going to be here and it costs 10 grand and we're here, and you didn't think about your marketing and your funnel and your close, right? And like, how did we loop this investment back into our company? But people don't see that as a company cost. They're like, oh, we're sponsoring, like I'm sponsoring something. It's like, yeah, but there's so many costs tied to your materials that you brought, the samples that you give away, or the time that you spent there, the staff that you sent, the
flight,
awnings that you
gas.
brought, yeah, the gas, all of those things, right? And so whether you're a tiny small business and you're doing this at a farmer's market, most people celebrate when they break even, when they're a small business and they go to a farmer's market or something like that. If your structure is losing money going to a farmer's market and you don't change your structure, but you scale, you will lose money going to a trade show. You will lose money going to a large sponsorship. Like that structure has to be scalable. And unfortunately, you have to dive into kind of the pennies of it to really understand how much is your marketing or your promotion or your outreach or your sales approach is actually costing you. So,
Yeah, just goes back to knowing your numbers, which
yes.
has me thinking, how many businesses are still successful 5 years later?
Uh, I'll be honest. I would say 20 or less percent. COVID has really changed the landscape in terms of business success and dynamic.
Mm,
So I don't know. I don't know past COVID if the success rate for your typical business has gone down. The only reason that I say that is at least in rural communities, you saw a lot of, right? So people can spend a year to 3 years getting a business ready to launch. And if that timing fell at the beginning of COVID, you saw this massive change. We lost millions of businesses during that time. There were so many businesses
wow.
closed. And at the same time, I really wish I knew what study it was. I'm drawing a blank on it, but it was I don't remember if it was like the U.S. Women's Chamber. I'm trying to remember one of the organizations that works a lot with small businesses worldwide. It might have been the SBA, the Small Business Administration at the federal level, but they talked about the number of businesses that closed without potential to reopen, the vacancies that have remained within those spaces within communities through the COVID time, and the number of new businesses that started, but all from home. There was like this, not an equal exchange, but pretty close. Um, and so, but as we're seeing currently right now, right, we're seeing a definite adjustment in the tech industry in terms of employment and tech industry. And
Right.
so a lot of what kind of launched up in response to those years of COVID was the convenience based companies, right? Tech based convenience. And so I'll be honest, I'm really interested to see maybe in the next 2 to 3 years how studies come out to show what the business cycle has been due to COVID, due to those, that 3 or 4 year cycle. But typically if you last to the 5 year point, or if you last even to 3 years, if you're making a profit at that point, you should celebrate. I think a
Yeah,
lot of people
get
go,
some ice cream.
yeah, yeah, get some ice cream. I think a lot of people go into business thinking like I'm going to get rich quick. And a lot of the stories that you see of people blowing up or going viral has come from massive years of failure. And so one of the things that I walk through with them with is just some points of sanity. Let's have our goal of growth, but let's also look at our kind of place of reality. Where are you right now, right? If you aren't breaking even at anything that you're doing on a monthly basis, or you're losing money, one, that's normal, right? You have to spend money to earn money, but your
Sure.
strategy is what's going to guide the revenue growth over your expenses, right? And so we kind of have to talk about that, and we have to talk about what does it look like if your business doesn't turn a profit at the end of this year. Let's have that conversation. Let's build strategy to make that not happen, but there has to be a level of acceptance and reality that people are at when they're starting small, without investors, without outside money, or even outside advising, right? Because sometimes it's just taking the right people who have the experience to tell you what to do, and have already gone through those lessons. And so if you are an isolated case, it's very much around, if you get through the first year, the second year, the third year, celebrate. At
Yeah.
least pre-COVID, there wasn't. It was, I believe, less than 1 in 5 that was making it past a 5 year profit.
Yeah. Long story short, it's very hard.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So in the spirit of making it 3 to 5 years, what operations truly make an impact to thrive and build?
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to answer this specifically around the entrepreneurship side, because I think the self-employment world is a little bit different in terms of longevity of of that, because your customer base really probably is just local and friendship and friends supporting friends. So in terms of entrepreneurship, I think operationally, allowing yourself to slow down and create systems that allow you later on to go faster. I would say that's probably, systems are one of my absolute favorite things. When I was in school, my minor was in operations, and just understanding how systems can give you freedom in your time, right? So as you're growing, as your entrepreneur, you want to look at what are income producing, revenue producing activities that I can spend all, or at least the majority of my time on, right? And so if you don't have a financial system, a way of tracking your receipts, a way of documenting your expenses, or your supply chain management, you are going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's going to stress you out, and you're going to like have one worksheet over here, one Word doc over here. You're going to have it written in your notebook over here, right? And then you're going to waste so much of your time trying to remember what you thought would be a good approach in that time. So, and that can apply to your marketing strategy. What does my sales and marketing strategy look like? Let me slow down, so that way, if like a holiday comes up and you want to do a big sale, right, and your goal is to make $100,000 that weekend, you need to know what you need to do a month or 2 months ahead of time to make that a success. If you just decide, oh, I'm going to launch this sale, it's Labor Day, I forgot, we'll just like post this Instagram, thing, or send out an email like that. If that happens, more power to you. Like, that's incredible, right? You've probably done a lot of work that maybe you didn't document, but the process of knowing why you're doing something, right? And so there's, from an operation standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, there's 3 levels to that. There's the strategy idea. There's a thought, I'm going to do it this way. There's the how. There's the actually designing what that looks like, right? So if your choice is, I'm going to have a Labor Day sale, great. That's a great strategy. That's a great idea. The how is what that entire strategy looks like. And then the doing, right? And that's like actually implementing your strategy. That is testing it. One of the things during the how and the doing, those two things together, you have to have metric monitoring. And so if you have a strategy and you say, I'm going to post 15 times on Instagram, I'm going to do a Facebook sale, I'm going to send out a newsletter, I'm going to have 3 pop-ups, I'm going to, launch something on my website, and then you implement and you do all of that, but you don't have any understanding of the metrics that you should be watching. You have no idea how to know outside of maybe if you hit that $100,000 sale, if it was a success or not, right? And then the next time you want to do it, if you don't hit that 100,000, you don't have something to compare to as to why you did or didn't. And so when you're looking at systems, whether you're looking at a financial system, sales, marketing, personnel, anything like that, you want to know, what is your strategy idea? What's your strategic approach? How do you see that manifesting? And then what do you actually do to do it? And what are you monitoring? What are those metrics that you're monitoring? And so from an operational standpoint, again, that starting with that business plan, that's going to tie to so much, right? That's going to give you the kind of the organizational structure for you to know where your strategy should lie. But it really is about slowing down, taking the time to build that out, make sure communication is clear, you're following up with your customers, you have ways to track your finances so that your CPA can file your taxes on time, right? Like there's so many things, and all of these are about automating. They're all about having a system that saves you time on your non-billable hours. That's what I reference them just from a service side, but really looking at those income producing activities and what, if I'm not income producing, why am I spending time on this? And is it because I have to, or is it because I don't have a system that automates this for me? And kind of
Yeah.
walk you through that question.
Yeah, in a world where we're used to instant gratification, it can seem like we're actually getting in the way by going slow, but you do have to go slow to then go fast, which can be hard to remember.
Yes, absolutely. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. All right, well, let's end with a fire round.
Okay.
I know we both talked about how much we love food, so what's your favorite restaurant?
Oh, geez. Unfortunately, my favorite restaurant closed, but
I know a lot did during COVID.
it closed COVID. But I will say there's I spend a lot of time in both Washington State and Florida, and right now there's a restaurant that's going to be launching. They were doing a pop up, and it was called Sushi Boy Danielson. It's going to be called
Ooh.
Coco, Koko, and it's an incredible chef he's worked at multiple Michelin star restaurants in Orlando, and he's bringing it to Cocoa Beach, and it's a kind of Japanese inspired cuisine, and it is
Ooh.
absolutely incredible. So if you're ever in Cocoa Beach in Florida, Daniel is the chef, and he'll be opening up this fall. So
Oh my gosh, that's exciting.
it's so good.
Gonna have to delay my Cocoa Beach trip.
Yeah, or just come again. It's everything from like sushi and udon bowls and like Japanese traditional Japanese style
Oh,
breakfast with like all
yum.
13 courses, and like he has this like tres leche matcha cake. Oh my gosh,
Oh my
he's
gosh.
incredible. Yeah, it's like
Oh my
he's
gosh.
bringing it all together, and so yeah, this fall.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
What brought you joy this week?
Ooh, I would have to say exercise. I was sick. I was sick for like a week, and then just not to dive into this. I've had a lot of life shifting happening over the last 2 years, and so exercise has kind of been my happy place, my place of sanity and joy. And so I got some great workouts in this week, or the last couple of days after being sick for a week. So I would say definitely exercise from an
Yeah.
athlete. That's
Yeah.
my joy.
I'm not the same if I don't work out, so I get it. Last question. How do you stay on top of current trends?
Oh my gosh. Definitely the podcasts. Podcasts are a
Yeah.
big thing for sure. I think I would say that. I also have really young nieces and nephews, and they definitely they range from like 2 years old to 21 this year, I believe. So I've got
Aw.
this good range of everything from is it Blippy? I think Blippy. All the
Oh,
way
I
up
don't even know what
to,
that is.
I think that's what it is. That's like my young niece. All the way up to my niece and older niece and nephew just kind of sharing with me, this is what's going on, this is what's happening in pop culture and all that. And outside of that, just my interest in politics and financials and things like that. Definitely just the podcasts in general. So
Yeah, I like listening to podcasts while I work out. That's
yep,
something that I use frequently.
definitely.
Brooklyn, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Why and how should people reach you?
I would say my email is probably the easiest. I definitely have an Instagram and a Facebook. Any social media for our company is Firm Foundations CC. So the letters CC. Our full company is Firm Foundations Community Consulting, and so that's just abbreviated there in that way. So Instagram and Facebook are both on there like that. My email, our website is www.firmfoundationscc.com. And my email is on that. But my email specifically is connect@firmfoundationscc.com. And so that's my email. I don't have anyone at the moment managing it. So if you email that, I will respond. And pretty similarly also with the social media. And honestly, if you have any questions about starting a business, scaling a business, and that honestly, from a corporate standpoint, could be for or nonprofit. I work a lot with nonprofits as well from the same kind of scalability. Just I really believe that nonprofit is nonprofit, not non-revenue. And so we can use a lot
Yes.
of our business and investment strategies. Actually, nonprofits can use those as well. And so if you're looking at starting or wanting to scale, would love to have a conversation with you. So
Awesome. Well, I hope there's now increased awareness that life after sport doesn't mean you have to get a job and work for someone else, but it is still important to have some sort of plan so that you're financially secure after your first career.
absolutely. Yeah. I recommend, even if you don't have anyone showing it to you, try and find it. Find it in podcasts or books, or probably honestly just message Bella and she can probably.
Yeah, I'll start keeping a repertoire here.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really, really great experience and I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Great. Until next time. Adios.
Adios.